The emergency lights cast a crimson wash across Dr. Elena Korlov's face, transforming her already sharp features into something more predatory. 12 years of work, 3 rejected proposals, countless sleepless nights, and multiple career-ending confrontations had led to this moment. The U.S. impossible was no longer just a theoretical schematic or a dismissed fever dream of technological innovation. It was real. Around her, the underground research complex hummed with an energy that was part scientific precision, part desperate hope. Surviving members of humanity's most brilliant minds worked in perfect synchronization, their movements choreographed by years of shared trauma and a singular purpose. The alien invasion had culled humanity's population by nearly 70%, but it had also done something unexpected. It had distilled human potential into its purest, most concentrated form. Quantum stabilization at 87%, called out Dr. Marcus Rodriguez, his fingers dancing across holographic interfaces that seemed to breathe with living light. His cybernetic arm, a replacement after losing the original during the first wave of alien attacks, moved with mechanical precision that belied the human creativity behind its design. Elena remembered the day the project was first conceived. It was 3 years after the initial Nexus collective invasion, during a secret conference in what remained of the United Nations underground headquarters in Geneva. While military strategists argued about conventional defense strategies, she had proposed something radical. A ship that wasn't just a weapon, but a living system of technological adaptation. It's impossible, the military commanders had said. The computational requirements alone would exceed. Impossible is just a word invented by people who lack imagination. She had responded, her voice cutting through their bureaucratic doubts like a laser. Now, that impossible concept was materializing before her eyes. The U.S. impossible wasn't constructed in the traditional sense. It was grown, cultivated like a complex organism. Exotic matter harvested from collapsed star systems formed its primary structure. Quantum neural networks replaced traditional computing systems, creating a ship that could learn, adapt, and evolve faster than any known technological system in human or alien history. Molecular integrity check complete, announced Dr. Rodriguez. We're seeing quantum entanglement levels that shouldn't be mathematically possible. Elena allowed herself a small smile. Impossible had always been her favorite word. The ship's external sensors began mapping its own existence, creating a real-time understanding of its capabilities that went beyond simple mechanical specifications. It was absorbing information, learning, becoming aware in a way no previous spacecraft had ever achieved. Surrounding the massive vessel were the remnants of humanity's most advanced technological research. Fragments of alien technology captured during desperate resistance missions were integrated into the ship's systems. Each piece was a puzzle, a technological trophy that represented humanity's most fundamental strength, the ability to learn, adapt, and transform. Energy fluctuations detected, warned a young technician, her voice tight with a mixture of fear and excitement. The quantum resonance is changing. Elena stepped closer to the primary observation window. The U.S. impossible was more than a weapon. It was a statement, a declaration that humanity would not go quietly into extinction. Every curve of its hull, every quantum circuit, every adaptive system was a middle finger to the universe that had tried to destroy them. Prepare for quantum initialization, she commanded, her voice steady. Today, we redefine what's possible. The crimson emergency lights continued to pulse, a heartbeat of technological rebellion. Humanity's last, best hope was about to be unleashed. The first wave came without warning, a silent apocalypse that erased 12 human colonies in less than 17 minutes. Captain Miranda Chen remembered every excruciating moment of that day. Each second itched into her memory like a burned scar. Earth Defense Command's primary communication hub in Singapore had been her post. Rows of holographic displays tracked the expanding disaster in real time, each flickering icon representing thousands of lives blinking out of existence. The Nexus Collective's attack was less an invasion and more a systematic erasure. precise, clinical, almost contemptuous in its efficiency. Colony Epsilon 7 offline, a young communications officer reported, his voice cracking. Total population, 2.3 million. Cause of destruction, unknown energy cascade. Miranda's cybernetic eye, a replacement from a previous conflict, processed information faster than her human counterpart. Quantum-enhanced retinal displays showed her technical details that made her blood run cold. The aliens hadn't just destroyed the colonies. They had unmade them, breaking down molecular structures with a level of technological precision that bordered on the mystical. Historical records would later show that humanity's first contact with the Nexus Collective had been peaceful. A transmission intercepted from deep space, a mathematical greeting that promised mutual understanding. But promises meant nothing when confronted with the Collective's true nature. They were not a traditional civilization. The Nexus Collective was a distributed intelligence, a network of technological organisms that viewed individual life as nothing more than a computational variable. Humanity was a statistical anomaly to be studied, controlled, or eliminated. In the command center, Miranda watched as entire planetary defense networks collapsed. Quantum-shielded satellites turned to dust. Communication arrays became silent graveyards of technology. The most advanced military systems humanity had developed became nothing more than expensive scrap metal against the Collective's weaponry. Energy signature detected, another officer called out. That's impossible. But nothing was impossible anymore. The attack pattern was mathematically perfect. Each colony was destroyed using the minimum energy required, with precision that suggested the Collective was doing more than just killing. They were collecting data, running some vast experiment whose parameters humanity couldn't comprehend. Miranda's hand touched the scared side of her face, a reminder of her first encounter with the Collective's technology during a reconnaissance mission 3 years earlier. She had been part of the first human team to make direct contact, a mission that had cost the lives of her entire crew and left her with more machine parts than organic ones. Total casualties estimated at 4.6 million. The young communications officer whispered, his voice a mixture of terror and disbelief. But Miranda saw something else. Where others saw total destruction, she saw a pattern. The Collective's attack, for all its technological superiority, followed a logic. And logic could be understood. Logic could be exploited. Her cybernetic eye began running complex algorithms, mapping the energy signatures, tracking the computational decisions behind each planetary destruction. The Collective thought in absolutes, in perfect mathematical calculations. They had never encountered a species that thought in possibilities. Humanity's greatest strength had always been its ability to be unpredictable, to find solutions in the spaces between known solutions, to transform limitations into opportunities. As the last colony icon faded from the holographic display, Miranda Chen made a decision. This was not the end. This was the beginning of humanity's true response. Initiate Project Impossible, she commanded, her voice cutting through the shocked silence of the command center. It's time we showed them what humanity can really do. The Atacama Desert Research Complex was humanity's last great temple of innovation. Buried 3 kilometers beneath the arid Chilean landscape, it represented the final crucible of human technological potential. Dr. Alejandro Reyes walked its cavernous laboratories like a high priest of a dying religion, each step a testament to humanity's most audacious hope. We're not building a ship, he announced to the assembled team of researchers, engineers, and survivors. We're creating an evolutionary response. The walls of the complex were lined with the impossible. Fragments of alien technology, harvested from crash sites, quantum computing arrays that defied traditional understanding, and biological mechanical hybrid systems that blurred the line between organic and artificial life. Each piece was a puzzle, a challenge to be understood, and ultimately transcended. Dr. Reyes placed his hand on a massive holographic display, showing the U.S. Impossible's design schematics. What appeared to be a ship was actually something far more complex, a living system that existed simultaneously as matter, energy, and something entirely undefined. Traditional spacecraft were built. The U.S. impossible was being grown. Quantum neural matrix at 62% integration, called out Dr. Elena Rodriguez, her voice a mixture of scientific precision and barely contained excitement. Her own body was a testament to human adaptation. Neural implants that allowed direct interface with the most complex technological systems, cybernetic enhancements that pushed the boundaries of human potential. The ship's primary structure utilized exotic matter harvested from the remnants of collapsed star systems. Each molecular bond was a computational node, capable of processing information at speeds that made traditional supercomputers look like ancient abacuses. The hull wasn't just a protective layer. It was a massive, distributed intelligence that could learn, adapt, and evolve in real time. The Military Review Board would lose their minds, muttered Dr. Marcus Rodriguez, reviewing the latest quantum entanglement readings. His cybernetic arm interfaced directly with the complex's main computer system, running calculations that would have been impossible just months earlier. Alejandro remembered the countless proposals that had been rejected. The traditional military minds couldn't comprehend a weapon that wasn't a weapon in any traditional sense. The U.S. impossible wasn't designed to destroy. It was designed to understand, to adapt, to transform. We're introducing biological neural networks harvested from human survivors, he explained to the team. Each system will carry the collective trauma, resilience, and innovative spirit of our species. It was more than technological innovation. It was a form of technological resurrection. Fragments of alien technology captured during desperate resistance missions were carefully integrated into the ship's systems. Each piece was studied, understood, and then fundamentally reimagined through a distinctly human lens. Where the Nexus Collective saw technology as a rigid, perfect system, humanity saw it as a living, breathing entity to be challenged and transformed. Quantum resonance is approaching critical threshold, Alinda announced. The air in the laboratory seemed to vibrate with potential energy. Static electricity danced across surfaces, a physical manifestation of the technological miracle being created. Alejandro understood the true nature of their creation. The U.S. impossible was more than a ship. It was humanity's middle finger to a universe that had tried to write them off. It was proof that limitation was nothing more than a failure of imagination. We're not just building a weapon, he said, his voice cutting through the technological hum of the laboratory. We're creating the next stage of human evolution. Outside, the Atacama Desert stretched into infinity, a landscape of impossible survival. Just like the ship being created deep beneath its surface, humanity would find a way to exist where nothing should be able to survive. The impossible was about to become very real. The void of space had never witnessed anything like the U.S. impossible. Captain Miranda Chen stood on the bridge, her cybernetic eye processing information at speeds that would have driven a normal human mind into madness. Around her, the ship's living systems breathed with an almost organic rhythm. Not mechanical, but something entirely new. Proximity alarms erupted in a symphony of quantum frequencies. The Nexus Collective's war fleet approached, a massive armada that had reduced 12 human colonies to cosmic dust in less than 17 minutes. Thousands of ships moved with mathematical precision, each vessel a perfect geometric shape that seemed to defy the very concept of individual design. Incoming transmission, announced Lieutenant Ariajon, her hands dancing across holographic interfaces that seemed to anticipate her movements. They're not even bothering with communication protocols. The transmission was less a message and more a computational assault. Billions of data packets designed to overwhelm, to analyze, to categorize. The Nexus Collective didn't see the U.S. impossible as a ship. They saw it as a problem to be solved, a variable to be calculated and eliminated. Miranda's lips curved into a smile that was more predatory than human. "Let them try," she whispered. The first volley of energy weapons would have vaporized any known human spacecraft. quantum-based projectiles that could disassemble molecular structures faster than light could travel. Weapons that didn't just destroy, they unmade existence itself. The U.S. Impossible did something no one expected. It didn't dodge. It didn't raise shields. It absorbed. Each weapon that struck the ship's hull was instantly analyzed, understood, and then transformed. The exotic matter that comprised the ship's structure began to reconfigure in real time. Molecular bonds shifted, quantum entanglement created impossible defensive patterns, and the very concept of a weapon became meaningless. Energy redistribution at 99.7% efficiency, Lieutenant Zhang reported, her voice a mixture of scientific wonder and pure excitement. They're not just failing to damage us. We're converting their attack into usable energy. The Nexus Collective's war computers began to experience something unprecedented: confusion. Their perfectly calculated battle strategies dissolved like tissue paper in a hurricane. Predictive algorithms that had systematically eliminated countless civilizations suddenly found themselves confronting a fundamental contradiction. How do you fight an enemy that doesn't just survive, but transforms? Miranda watched as the first wave of collective ships began to change their attack patterns. Thousands of vessels began to move with increasing desperation, their perfect geometric formations breaking down into something almost chaotic. "They're learning," she said, "but not fast enough." The U.S. Impossible began to broadcast, not a traditional communication, but a quantum-level transmission that was part weapon, part conversation. Compressed within milliseconds were the entire evolutionary history of humanity. Every struggle, every failure, every unexpected triumph. It wasn't just a ship engaging in battle. It was humanity itself reaching out, challenging the very foundations of the Nexus Collective's understanding of intelligence. Lieutenant Zhang's console erupted with impossible readings. "Captain, their computational networks are. I can't even describe what's happening. It's like we're rewriting their fundamental understanding of warfare." Miranda's cybernetic eye zoomed in on the massive alien fleet. Where there had been perfect precision, there was now hesitation, uncertainty, the first true emotion the Nexus Collective had ever experienced. "We're not here to destroy," Miranda transmitted, her voice cutting through quantum frequencies. "We're here to show you what it means to be truly alive." The battle had begun. But this was more than a military engagement. This was a philosophical revolution carried out at the speed of thought. Humanity's first true weapon was about to be unleashed. The U.S. Impossible became living chaos. Dr. Alejandro Reyes watched from the remote monitoring station, his breath catching in his throat as the ship demonstrated capabilities that defied every known law of physics, engineering, and computational theory. What they had created was not just a weapon. It was a living system of unprecedented adaptive potential. Energy weapons that could obliterate planets were absorbed, analyzed, and weaponized within microseconds. The ship's hull was no longer a simple protective barrier, but a dynamic, living membrane that processed information faster than the most advanced quantum computers in the known universe. Molecular reconfiguration is beyond our initial projections, Lieutenant Aria Zhang reported, her fingers dancing across holographic interfaces that seemed to breathe with living light. "We're seeing adaptive responses that weren't even theoretically possible in our original designs." The ship shifted between states of matter that shouldn't exist simultaneously. Solid became liquid. Energy became matter. The very concept of physical limitation dissolved in the U.S. Impossible's quantum embrace. Where traditional spacecraft had rigid systems, this vessel was pure potential, a technological organism that learned and evolved with each passing moment. Fragments of alien technology captured during previous resistance missions were integrated into the ship's systems in real time. Each piece of captured Nexus Collective technology became another node in the ship's ever-expanding neural network. It wasn't just absorbing information, it was understanding, transforming, reimagining. Energy redistribution at 99.9% efficiency, Zhang announced, her voice a mixture of scientific wonder and pure excitement. "We're not just defending. We're rewriting the fundamental language of technological engagement. The Nexus Collective's war computers began to experience something unprecedented: genuine uncertainty. Their perfectly calculated battle strategies dissolved like tissue paper in a hurricane. Predictive algorithms that had systematically eliminated countless civilizations found themselves confronting a fundamental contradiction. Dr. Reyes understood the true nature of their creation. The U.S. Impossible was a living testament to human potential, a vessel that embodied humanity's most fundamental strength. Not raw power, but the ability to adapt, to transform, to find solution in the spaces between known possibilities. "We're seeing quantum entanglement patterns that shouldn't exist," muttered Dr. Elena Rodriguez, reviewing the live data streams. Her neural implants worked overtime, processing information at speeds that would have driven a normal human mind into complete overload. It's like the ship is having a conversation with the universe itself. Each system aboard the U.S. Impossible was both centralized and decentralized. Traditional computing hierarchies meant nothing. The ship thought like a human mind, chaotic, intuitive, capable of making quantum leaps of logic that defied mathematical prediction. Alien weapon systems that had reduced entire planetary civilizations to cosmic dust were now being analyzed, understood, and then fundamentally transformed. The U.S. Impossible didn't just defend. It learned. It grew. It challenged the very foundations of technological warfare. "Computational analysis is futile," Zhang reported, a hint of triumph in her voice. The Nexus Collective's communication networks were experiencing something they had never encountered, a form of intelligence that didn't follow rules but created them. Dr. Rice watched as the ship moved through space. It wasn't flying. It was dancing. Each movement was a complex mathematical equation solved in real time, a symphony of potential that rewrote the language of technological engagement. "We're not just fighting," Rice whispered to himself. "We're evolving." The U.S. Impossible was more than a weapon. It was humanity's response to extinction, a living proof that limitation was nothing more than a failure of imagination. And the universe was about to learn that humanity's imagination knew no bounds. Psychological warfare had never been about weapons. It was about breaking fundamental understanding. Captain Miranda Chen understood this better than anyone. Her cybernetic eye processed the Nexus Collective's communication networks like a predator analyzing prey. The ship around her was no longer just a vessel. It was a living weapon of philosophical destruction. The quantum transmission began as a whisper, then grew into a cascading wave of pure information. It wasn't an attack in any traditional sense. The U.S. Impossible was broadcasting humanity's entire existential experience, compressed into a quantum frequency that bypassed traditional computational defenses. Pain, resilience, hope, failure, triumph. Emotions that the Nexus Collective had never comprehended began to flood their distributed intelligence. Each quantum packet was a story, a moment of human experience that defied their mathematical understanding of existence. Where they saw predictable patterns, humanity presented chaos. Where they understood linear progress, humans demonstrated explosive, unpredictable evolution. "They're trying to process," Lieutenant Aria Zhang reported, her voice a mixture of scientific fascination and pure excitement. "But their computational models can't handle the complexity." The Nexus Collective had eliminated countless civilizations. They viewed intelligent life as a series of mathematical variables to be solved, controlled, or eradicated. Humanity was presenting them with an entirely new equation, one that couldn't be solved, only experienced. Dr. Alejandro Reyes watched from the remote monitoring station, his hands clasped together in a mixture of tension and anticipation. "We're not just fighting," he whispered to himself. "We're teaching." Each moment of the transmission was a quantum lesson. The survival of the Warsaw Ghetto during World War II. The moon landing. The fall of the Berlin Wall. Scientific breakthroughs. Artistic revelations. Moments of individual and collective human triumph that defied every mathematical prediction. The alien war computers began to experience something unprecedented: cognitive dissonance. Their perfectly calibrated systems started to fracture. Predictive algorithms that had systematically analyzed and eliminated countless civilizations suddenly found themselves confronting a fundamental contradiction. Humanity wasn't a problem to be solved. Humanity was a living, breathing question that rewrote its own parameters. Computational networks are becoming unstable, Zhang announced. The holographic displays around her flickered with impossible data streams. They're trying to categorize our transmission, but it's like trying to contain an ocean in a teacup. Miranda Chen's smile was predatory. This was humanity's true weapon, not technology, but the ability to transform, to find potential in the spaces between known possibilities. The quantum transmission continued, a relentless wave of human experience. Each moment was a challenge to the Nexus Collective's fundamental understanding of intelligence. Where they saw rigid systems, humanity presented fluidity. Where they understood control, humans demonstrated adaptation. We're rewriting their entire computational language, Dr. Elena Rodriguez muttered, reviewing the live data streams. Her neural implants worked overtime, processing information at speeds that would have driven a normal human mind into complete overload. The battle wasn't happening in physical space. It was a war of philosophical paradigms, fought at the speed of thought. The Nexus Collective's war computers began to experience the closest thing to emotion they had ever known: confusion, uncertainty. For the first time in their millennia-long existence, they encountered an intelligence that didn't just resist, it transformed. Transmission continues, Jean reported. They're listening. Humanity had never been about survival. Humanity had always been about becoming. And the universe was about to learn the difference. The final confrontation transcended traditional understanding of battle. Space itself seemed to ripple as the U.S. Impossible interfaced directly with the Nexus Collective's central consciousness. Captain Miranda Chen stood at the epicenter of a quantum storm, her cybernetic systems pushed beyond every known technological limitation. The bridge of the ship was no longer a command center. It was a living membrane of pure potential. We're achieving direct quantum communication, Lieutenant Aria Zhang reported, her voice a mixture of scientific awe and pure excitement. Computational boundaries are dissolving. The interface was more than a technological connection. It was a philosophical invasion. Compressed within microseconds were the entire evolutionary experiences of humanity. Every struggle, every failure, every unexpected triumph. The Nexus Collective had eliminated countless civilizations, viewing them as mathematical problems to be solved. Humanity presented itself as a living, breathing question that continuously rewrote its own parameters. Dr. Alejandro Reyes watched from the remote monitoring station, his hands trembling with the magnitude of what was unfolding. "This isn't just a battle," he whispered. "This is first contact. Real first contact." The ship's exotic matter hull began to shift in ways that defied physical laws. Solid became liquid. Energy became matter. Information became experience. The U.S. Impossible was no longer just a vessel. It was a living translation device, transforming the fundamental language of intelligence itself. Fragments of human experience cascaded through the quantum interface. The desperate survival of indigenous populations against colonial invasions. The mathematical breakthrough of imaginary numbers. The moment the first human looked up and imagined traveling to the stars. Artistic revelations that challenged entire philosophical paradigms. Scientific discoveries born from pure curiosity. The Nexus Collective's central intelligence began to experience something it had never known: doubt. Their perfectly calibrated systems started to fracture. Predictive algorithms that had systematically analyzed and eliminated countless civilizations found themselves confronting a fundamental contradiction. Humanity wasn't a problem to be solved. Humanity was a living process of continuous becoming. Computational networks are entering an unprecedented state, Zhang announced. The holographic displays around her erupted with impossible data streams. They're trying to categorize our transmission, but it's like trying to capture lightning in a bottle. Miranda Chen understood the true nature of their mission. This wasn't about destruction. This was about communication, about challenging the very foundations of what intelligence could mean. The quantum transmission continued, a relentless wave of human potential. Each moment was a challenge to the Nexus Collective's fundamental understanding of existence. Where they saw rigid systems, humanity presented fluidity. Where they understood control, humans demonstrated explosive, unpredictable evolution. Dr. Elena Rodriguez's neural implants worked at impossible speeds, processing information that would have driven a normal human mind into complete overload. "We're rewriting their entire computational language," she muttered, watching the data streams dance. The battle wasn't happening in physical space. It was a war of philosophical paradigms, fought at the speed of thought. The U.S. Impossible had become more than a ship. It was a living bridge between two fundamentally different forms of intelligence. Transmission reaching critical quantum resonance, Zhang reported. The ship's systems vibrated with an energy that was part technological, part something entirely undefined. For the first time in their millennia-long existence, the Nexus Collective encountered an intelligence that didn't just resist. It transformed. An intelligence that saw limitation as nothing more than a failure of imagination. The universe held its breath. Humanity was about to teach an entire civilization what it meant to truly be alive. Silence followed the most profound communication in cosmic history. Captain Miranda Chen stood on the bridge of the U.S. Impossible, watching as the last remnants of the Nexus Collective's war fleet dissolved into quantum echoes. It wasn't a traditional victory. It was something far more complex, a fundamental transformation of understanding that would reshape intelligent life across the universe. Dr. Alejandro Reyes arrived on the ship's bridge, his hands trembling with the weight of what they had accomplished. The remote monitoring station had captured every microsecond of the extraordinary encounter. What humanity had done went beyond military triumph. They had challenged the very foundations of intelligence itself. "We didn't just survive," Miranda said, her cybernetic eye scanning the vast emptiness of space. "We evolved." The ship around them was no longer just a technological marvel. It had become a living testament to human potential, a bridge between different forms of consciousness that defied every previous understanding of communication, warfare, and existence. Fragments of the Nexus Collective's computational network still drifted through the quantum interface, but they were fundamentally changed. Where there had been absolute certainty, there was now curiosity. Where there had been rigid control, there was now potential for growth. Lieutenant Aria Zhang began compiling the initial reports. "The transmission we sent," she said, her voice filled with a mixture of scientific wonder and pure excitement. "It wasn't just information. It was an entire philosophy of existence." Dr. Elena Rodriguez reviewed the quantum data streams, her neural implants processing information at speeds that would have driven a normal human mind into complete overload. "We've done something unprecedented," she muttered. "We've introduced the concept of uncertainty to a civilization that believed uncertainty was impossible." The U.S. Impossible had become more than a ship. It was a living library of human experience, a quantum archive that carried the entire evolutionary journey of humanity. Every struggle, every failure, every unexpected triumph was now a part of a cosmic dialogue that would reshape intelligent life. Alejandro understood the true significance of their achievement. Humanity had never been about survival. Humanity had always been about becoming. "The Nexus Collective is gone," Miranda announced to the crew. "But what we've created is something entirely new." The ship's exotic matter hull continued to shift and breathe, a living system that was part technology, part something entirely undefined. Fragments of alien technology captured during previous resistance missions were now integrated into a new form of intelligence, a hybrid consciousness that defied traditional understanding. Reports began to stream in from human colonies across the galaxy. The defeat of the Nexus Collective had done more than ensure human survival. It had opened up possibilities that had previously been unimaginable. Entire systems of thought were being reimagined. Scientific understanding was exploding in directions nobody could have predicted. "We're receiving transmissions," Zhang reported. "But they're different. It's like the entire universe is learning to communicate in a new way." The quantum transmission they had sent continued to ripple through space, a living message that carried the essence of human potential: pain, resilience, hope, failure, triumph. Each moment a challenge to the fundamental understanding of what intelligence could mean. Dr. Rodriguez looked at Miranda. "We've changed everything," she said. Miranda's smile was something between a predator's triumph and a parent's pride. "We've just begun." The U.S. impossible hung in space, a living proof that the most powerful weapon humanity had ever created was not technology. It was the ability to transform, to find potential in the spaces between known possibilities. The universe would never be the same. Humanity had just introduced chaos to the cosmic order, and they were just getting started.